Some founders build businesses. Others rebuild broken ones, scale them fast, and then walk away with the kind of lessons you only earn the hard way. Josh Davis is one of those people. He's a 5-time founder, acquirer, and turnaround operator who spent his career stepping into complexity, finding what's broken, and building companies that actually work. Under his leadership, a logistics business grew into one of the fastest growing companies for acquisitions, high performance teams, and award-winning software before being sold just 3 years after startup to one of the largest transportation companies in North America backed by private equity. Over the years, he's led more than 10 acquisitions and turnarounds across industries, and today, through JL Davis Enterprises, he helps founders scale with the right systems and the right culture. But what makes Josh interesting is not just the growth story, it's the tension underneath it. The grind of building without losing yourself. The challenge of creating something valuable without sacrificing your family, your faith, or your culture. He speaks with the perspective of someone who has seen how easy it is to chase scale and miss the point entirely, and how much harder it is to build a business that creates both enterprise value and real-life value. Josh has been recognized nationally, including Business in Vancouver's 40 Under 40 and the Top 40 Under 40. And before we start this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth, and the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Jane, a graduate, who says, and I quote, "The Deep Wealth Mastery Program prevented me from making what would have been one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I almost signed on the dotted line with an unsolicited offer that I now realize would have shortchanged my hard work and my future had I accepted that offer. Deep Wealth Mastery has tilted the playing field to my advantage." Or how about Lynn? Wow, he gets right to the point, and I quote, "Deep Wealth Mastery is one of the best investments ever made because you'll get an ROI of 100 times that. Anyone who doesn't go through this will lose millions." And as you're listening to these testimonials, are you wondering if you have the time? Are you even thinking that you've got this covered? You have the advisors or people in your network? Well, I got to tell you, these myths, they're often behind the 90% failure rate for liquidity events. Think about it. You have one chance to get it right for your financial freedom. You really want to make it count. And when it comes to time, let's hear what William has to say. We just got in this testimonial. William says, and I quote, "I didn't have the time for Deep Wealth Mastery, but I made the time and I'm glad I did. What I learned goes far beyond any other executive program or coach I've experienced." So what do you think? As I hear that, that's exactly what gets me out of bed every day. That's my mission. That's the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. And my Deep Wealth Nation, what I want you to know, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it isn't theory. It's from the trenches. It's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created the system that later on, myself and my business partners, we said yes to a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. That's what we now call the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or the Scale for Ultimate Sales system. It's built by business owners for business owners. So if you're interested in growing your profits, for preparing for a future liquidity event, and that may be 2 years away, it could be 22 years away, whatever the time may be, you want to do this now, and you want to optimize your post-exit life. Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. To get started, email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. You'll receive all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, or better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll go through exactly where your business is today and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you. They're looking to grow their businesses, create market disruptions, and unlock their financial freedom to get what they deserve. And whether you've been in business for 3 years, 40 years, you're a startup, you're in manufacturing, you're in high tech, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners. It's a safe space. It's a confidential space with business owners, with businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. So again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Health Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Health Podcast. Well, Deep Health Nation, we have a fellow founder, not just a founder, a post-exit entrepreneur. Lots of stories from the trenches, lots of successes, but I'm going to put a pause in it right there. Josh, welcome to the Deep Health Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story, and you have an incredible story. So what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Thanks a lot for having me, Jeff. Yeah, it's quite a loaded question. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. I've been in the trenches for about 18 years. Ever since I was a kid, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Both of my peers were successful entrepreneurs building something from nothing. And so being a kid and witnessing that, it just planted a seed early on. And, I watched my parents go through some financial struggles as a kid and go through divorce and things like that. And so that really ignited my passion after that to really build a business and be able to help my parents in the future. And so that kind of kickstarted my journey. Originally, the plan was go to business school, get a business degree. And that's what I always thought I wanted to do. But unfortunately, one of my grandfathers got sick with cancer, and I ended up dropping out of business school and taking care of him for a few years before he passed on. And through that, that just continued to expand my curiosity about entrepreneurship and learning more about his life story. And we got to travel and went on an amazing sailing adventure together and did all these things. And so once he eventually passed away, which was quite a dramatic moment in my life, I started pursuing my entrepreneurial ambitions. And I think I went hard for about 8 years. I had some success, had a number of failures. And then fortunately, I eventually figured it out. My wife and I, we started a business a week after our honeymoon. We scaled it and exited to private equity within 3 years. So that's the quick snapshot. And now today we run a family office and we do acquisitions and business consulting, helping either our own businesses scale or helping other founders scale the right way with our own systems. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh my goodness, so much there, Josh. Let's go back though to the earlier years because you said something interesting where you're fortunate and it sounds as though you had for your mentors, for your founders, your grandfathers. And so growing up as a young child, what was that like when you look back? What was the impact back in the day? Maybe you didn't even realize it, but now that you look back, oh yeah, okay, I can connect the dots.
Yeah, so both of them, one was a mayor of a city and built up a construction business and then like hardware stores and things like that. And then my other grandfather was in the mining industry. And so one thing that I always noticed as a kid, just how many people in their lives, like old employees or people from their past that would come and visit them and share all the old stories. And just, I could just see these relationships and how both my grandfathers impacted so many people's lives and how many friends that they had. And just like looking back on that now, just seeing how well they treated people and creating good jobs for people. And so that was definitely a big thing that I think it was just like planted in me, but thinking back on it now. And then the other thing that was really inspiring was the ability to like build something up, not take care of your family, take care of other people, give back into the community. I just watched that on both sides of the family growing up. And I used to play business person with my little sister, setting up a desk and a phone and things like that. And I'd imitate my grandfather's. It was from a very early age. I recognized it was different. Yeah.
And for the listener in Deep Wealth Nation, Josh, they didn't have what you had, these incredible, in this case, your grandfathers, these two men who, unbeknownst to you at the time, they were sculpting you and shaping you to become the success and the man that you are today. For someone who never had that, they now find themselves, okay, I now have that opportunity. Perhaps it's with their own children, or perhaps it's with some other young people in their lives. What advice would you give them of looking back, what made the difference for you from your grandfathers?
Yeah, I think especially my one grandfather, who I spent most of that 2 years with him while he was battling cancer, I think something that was very impactful for me was just the real raw stories of the truth of building a business. So like when I was born, they were already successful. Going back and hearing the stories of having nothing and putting things together, dropping out of school, like all the things that you don't see even my wife and I experienced, people think we just all of a sudden got successful out of nowhere. It's many years of in the trenches, long nights, stress, not knowing how you're going to pay the bills. And I think for me, that was very helpful to hear the real behind the scenes of what it's really like to build a successful business and a successful life. So, and I do a lot of mentorship with young business owners and entrepreneurs. I try to be as real as possible, tell them, all tough and the realistic things that do happen in sacrifices in building a business.
And as we're talking about that, Josh, when I was preparing for today, one of the things that came through with your journey, your story, you speak a lot about building with faith and family and purpose as a system, as being all intact. And as I look back on my journey, I said, wow, Jeffrey, did you really drop the ball in some of those areas where I let the business needs go before all else and made a lot of mistakes because of that along the way. From your side of things, what does that look like for you, a faith, family, and purpose being intact? And then the follow-up, how do you deal with that when you have I'm building a business. I have these pressures. I've got payroll I need to meet, and I have these other pressures going on. So what was that like for you? What can you share with us?
Yeah, I would say that framework that I talk about a lot and I built, that really happened post exit. I've had a few exits, but one substantial one. I really built that framework to change the way that I was doing things previously. And so what I would say, especially when my wife and I first started the business, a week after our honeymoon with one other partner, we had no kids, we were young, and everything revolved around the business. We didn't own a house at the time. We had, a nice apartment downtown and things like that. So we could take a lot of risk, and we could basically everything that we put into the business, we could do that, and we can work extremely long hours and weekends. And looking back on it, our whole life revolved around the business. I don't know if I'd recommend recently married people going into business together immediately. I think that was challenging. It definitely made us stronger, and it set us up for success and set us up for when we have family. Now we've got 2 kids, and life's quite different having young kids now. But I would say the shift that happened with me and thinking about faith, family, purpose was when my wife got pregnant. So when my wife got pregnant, we were driving into work, and we didn't talk about this, but as we're driving into work, business is scaling. We're one of the fastest growing logistics companies. And she's like, "Dear, I've been thinking about this. And when our daughter's born, I don't know if I want to keep working in the operations of the business." And so I remember gripping the wheel and just thinking to myself, how are we going to do that? Everything we had is in the business. We were barely paying ourselves nothing. Everything went in to continue to fund the growth. And so that's really what kind of changed the journey, made us take a step back. What's important once we have kids, our faith, our family, our purpose. And ultimately, that was one of the reasons why we decided to sell that specific business. It just got to the point we didn't have outside investors. It was just our partners and I investing what we had and scaling organically. And it just got to a certain point that to continue to grow, we had to take outside investment. And so that's what happened. And then we sold to one of the largest transportation and logistics companies in North America that was owned by a US private equity firm. And then I worked with them for 2 years. And then once I transitioned out, so this is a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I'd say, once I stepped down as CEO, I took time off, went through a little bit of identity crisis, not having all these employees and all these meetings. And it was just quiet. I had 2 kids. I had a toddler and a new baby at the time. And I spent 6 months being the present dad and taking my family on trips. And then I just realized, and it was my wife who gave me a bit of a nudge, I'm not meant to be a stay-at-home dad. I'm meant to build and scale and be in leadership. And so that's where it was a bit of a process, but we came up with the faith, the family, the purpose as we build and scale. So that we sold the business almost 6 years ago, and I stepped down about 3.5 years ago as CEO.
And Josh, if it makes you feel any better, post exit for myself as well. I did not find that happily ever after. And lunch was a highlight of my days, very similar to you. I had a newborn, and my eldest at the time was around 5 years old. And no one feels sorry for the guy at home in his pajamas, lots of zeros in the bank account, who's bored out of his mind. No one wants to come out and play because they got their lives or their companies or their profession, and absolutely get that. In fact, in Deep Wealth Mastery, with the Deep Wealth 9-step roadmap, step 10, we actually put that at the beginning. Step 10 was the post-exit. I failed at that so badly. I said,
Yes.
okay, I want everyone to know about this, but right up front of what not to do, look up failure post-exit. There's Jeffrey's picture. And I said, okay, here's what I did. Here's what you're not going to do. And so I'm right there with you. You're not alone with that. So let's talk about your building of the business, but your exits as well. And then on the acquisition side, because Deep Wealth Nation, Josh is really modest. 5-time founder, lots of acquisitions along the way. He's a turnaround guy. So he comes in, makes it better, adds more value, finds what's broken. And what I love about your story, you've been on both sides of the table, the founder and then the acquirer. So when you look at, okay, that huge exit, you also had others along the way. When you look at, okay, I'm building the company and now I'm going to go into a liquidity event, whether that means I'm selling all of it or I'm keeping some of it, some chips off the table. When you look back, is there something that stands out as, yeah, hey, Jeffrey, if I was going to do it again, I would do this all day long, or I would run in the opposite direction. I would not do this other thing all day long. Anything that comes to mind that you can share with Deep Wealth Nation, given your experience?
Oh, that's such a good question. I could go a couple different directions with this. Yeah, I would say me as a business owner, I like building for the long term. And so I think one thing that I learned through building that high growth startup and exiting, like I didn't actually want to sell. There was my other partner had some other business investments, so he wanted to sell. My wife wanted to be out of operations. And then we've got this company from starting from 3 of us, and was quite, for us, was really big at the time. We needed to make a decision to continue to fund the growth. And so, but yeah, it's hard when you build a business, you put everything into it, you care about the people, you like the business, you're having fun, you enjoy, there's a lot of chaos in it. Selling a business is really hard. And so I wanted to say, like, if you can build a business for the long term and just keep holding on to it, and if you have the ability to build it the right way and pass it on to your kids and things like that. But I don't want to say that because in our circumstance, we had to sell for multiple reasons. I'm happy that we ended up doing it. And I feel very fortunate and blessed that I'm in a position now where I have enough capital. I don't have outside investors inside my family office, where I can choose to build for the long term. And I can make decisions differently than I did when I was scrappy startup, no outside investors. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question. But I would say, like, looking back on it, if I did have the ability to build and scale for the long term, I would have. But the industry we're in and the timing of it, it was best not only for us, but also for the stage of the company we're in, best for the employees, being part of a bigger, stable, private equity backed, strategic, lots of opportunities for growth for the team members and stuff like that. So it was a bittersweet situation on the exit.
It's interesting as you're talking about that, you're having me think back along my journey, and we bootstrapped everything. And what always would never cease to amaze me was we would turn a corner, profits are coming in now, we're getting the return on investment, company gets to a certain size. Okay, well, I now have to reinvest in the infrastructure or get more talented people in different areas, and it just adds up. And okay, well, there goes the profits. I'm going to put it all back into the company. So absolutely hear what you're saying. In Deep Wealth Nation, what's interesting, Josh, and thank you so much, Josh, for being vulnerable and open with us. As founders, we really got to ask ourselves, am I the best person to take the company to the next level? Because it means checking the ego at the door. It's not about me. It's about my stakeholders. It's about my team. And Josh, similar to you, I realized for my company, could I do it? Could I take the company to the next level? Yeah, I could. Would I be the best at it? Absolutely not. It was skill sets I didn't have. It was now the company went from being this scrappy startup. It was a corporate entity. I'm not a corporate guy. And so for me, it was, okay, I got to fire myself and let's find the right people who can take it to the next level. Not for me, but for the team, for the business, for the customers, the clients that are depending on it. And it sounds like you were there. And I'm wondering, when you were going through the due diligence now, and you're under the private equity microscope, and they have their army of all these advisors and lawyers and these really smart people. What was that like for you as the business owner? You're getting asked all of these questions and you're under the microscope. What was going on there?
Oh, that's another good question. So, like, we were on a 2-year transition. So, during that kind of transition earnout period, not a lot changed. There obviously was some corporate changes, but overall, I was still CEO. I was making the decisions for the business. Obviously, I had people to answer to, and I had finance meetings. That's one thing I would say is a lot of finance meetings, a lot of meetings on the numbers. And at first, I didn't like it because we were basically like, as long as we're scaling and growing, we're totally fine. But, I really grew to appreciate financial reporting, budgeting, things like that. So I definitely at first didn't necessarily like that. But then after looking back on it, I've used some things that I've learned there in my businesses since. So that was helpful. After your earnout period, and then you got to start doing integration. That's where I realized, just like you said, is like, I'm not a corporate guy. And I never intended to necessarily leave. Like in my mind, I was like, as long as the partnership's working good, I can do this forever. But then once we started getting the integration and stuff, and I knew things needed to change and different stuff like that, that's where I actually realized I was the kind of the bottleneck, because I still wanted to run, a scrappy entrepreneurial culture and just be aggressive in sales and growth and building the team and leadership development and all that stuff. And once it gets to a certain point, the business cycle, it does need a little bit more structure and corporatization and stuff like that. That's where I realized, this was the right step for the business, but I wasn't that corporate guy to go on to that executive team. And so I made the tough decision to step down. And yeah, most of the team members are still there. The business is still, doing well. And so, yeah, I'm really happy to see that from afar.
And Default Nation, as you're thinking about that, as you're taking that all in, I want you to listen really carefully now to the next part with what I'm about to ask Josh. So, Josh, in my own journey as an example, I often say that that very first buyer who approached us and gave us that 7-figure offer, that was the wolf in sheep's clothing. And very smart, sophisticated buyer, all the tricks up his sleeve. But at the same time, it's like that old saying, when you point a finger at someone, 4 fingers are pointing right back at you. And yes, that 7-figure offer was very deliberate on that buyer's part instead of the 9 figures that we were worth. There are things that I was doing or not doing in this case that didn't help my case. And so when you went from, okay, maybe even owning your own company and you're now growing through acquisitions, or now when you cross over to the other side and private equity, you're looking at buying companies, what would you want a founder in Default Nation to know of what buyers and investors are looking at that either has them do one or two things and neither are great? Hey, I'm going to run for the hills as fast as I can. I don't like what I'm seeing here. I don't need a second full-time job, otherwise known as running your company when you're no longer around, everything's falling to pieces. Or, hey, your company's a mess. I'm going to penalize it. The enterprise value
Yes.
is going to get significantly lower. So what does that look like as a buyer? What were some telltale signs when you're looking to invest in or buy companies that you want us to know about of typical mistakes?
Okay. Yeah, there's a number. I think the big ones would be financials, people, and systems. So I would say one thing I learned through that exit is making sure your books are clean, you're doing proper reporting, making sure you're doing accruals properly, like just really get your financial back end really cleaned up. When you're going to market, make sure if you've got any normalizations, make sure you're clear on that. Things, even when we're looking into do acquisitions, if the financials are messy and there's these different weird things that are running through the business, it makes you just worried. What else are you missing? What else are you digging into? So if like your books are really clean, you've got your clear normalized EBITDA and things like that. So that's really important. So before you go to sell, if you're running a lifestyle business, running a bunch of different things through the business that maybe don't need to be a part of the operations, you want to get really clear on that. You want to be upfront with that to the seller. So that's a big one. The other one, and this one is really, really important, is for any founders that are really stuck in the weeds of the business. So if you're involved in all the big sales, the firefighting, the operations, you have a lot of the key relationships, not just internally, but with the customers, you could get penalized for that. And it makes potential buyers very nervous that the business relies too much on the founder and the owner. So I think it's really important before going to market to making sure you have the right people in the right seats and you're delegating. You've got, whether it's a general manager or an operations manager, making sure that the business doesn't rely so heavily on the founder. You can definitely get a significant multiple, and buyers, even like ourselves, we don't want to buy a business that relies so much on the founder and all the customers only like dealing with the founder. That creates a lot of potential challenges and potentially a longer transition as well. So that's really important, making sure you have the right people in the right seats. And then obviously systems. The more that you can have documented systems and the right technology, and the business is like can be more turnkey for the next buyer, that just gives you a better chance of getting a higher multiple and a deal getting across the finish line. So those are three kind of big things that I learned through selling our company, and then as well as companies that I'm looking to buy.
And so, as we're talking through this, let's make it personal if we could. Let's go back a little bit to yourself. And it could be present day, it could be back in the day when you're in the seat and, okay, I'm the founder, I'm the business owner, or maybe I'm even investing or now buying a company. Great, I own it outright. Do you remember the moment when you first realized that, hey, this company can actually be successful from the outside looking in, the inside looking out, but I'm not at the center of it? It doesn't run having me in there. Actually, it runs better without me in it.
Totally.
What was that moment like? Can you share with us in terms of what that was like for you and the mind shift that happened after that?
Oh, that is a big thing that I had to learn. If I really wanted to scale a business, I learned quite quickly, the more that I'm involved in my hands in too many things and too many of, the big decisions, and I don't have the right people in the right seats and the right systems. In my own businesses, I was the ceiling of the business. The business could only go as high as I had capacity. And so it was a light bulb moment in one of my companies. Once we hit about 35 million in revenue, it was really difficult to get to that next level. And that's when I talked to different mentors and read different books, and I realized that I was the bottleneck. And so that's when I got really focused on making sure that we hire A players, we put the right people in the right seats, and as much as possible, push the decisions down as far as possible so that I was able to focus on the things that only I could do. And that really lit me up. And so it was quite a process, but eventually I saw just how much a business can scale if the founder gets out of the way. And I'll be honest with the audience here. At one point in my life, I don't believe it anymore, I thought I was the only person who could do it. I was like, nobody can do it as good as me. I need to be involved in this. The big sales meetings, like, even though I try to be a humble person, it was just in the back of my mind that nobody could do it as good as me. And it took time. But once I passed things off, and even in some cases where someone who doesn't have as much experience as me and they do it differently than me, even if they do it 80% of the way that I would do it and I didn't have to be involved, I just saw the magic of the leverage and the compounding of that. So I don't want to pretend like I was always like this. It probably was 10 years before it really sunk in that the most important things a founder can do is hire the right person, put them in the right seats, show them what great looks like, give them clear metrics, and let them run and scale their part of the business. And that's how I'm able to run multiple companies today without being so much in the weeds like I was.
And for someone in Deep Wealth Nation, as they're listening to this, because we've all been there and some of us are still there as founders, hey, yeah, Josh, Jeffrey, I hear you, but you're right, because I'm the best person to do it. No one can do it as quick as me. And I've brought people in before and they've failed. I've had to fire them. It cost me money. It cost me time. So for that founder that is drinking their own Kool-Aid, where 90% still isn't good enough, 80% of a person's 80% is good to me still isn't good enough, 60% isn't good enough, what would you say to them to help them get over that self-limiting belief of, hey, it doesn't have to be just you. You can have a bigger, faster, more profitable company when you have other people coming in. Essentially, we're firing ourselves from the roles we shouldn't be in. What would you tell that founder?
And actually, I've got something for the audience now that you said that. I would talk about that at the end. But the one thing that was happening to me was I didn't have a strong enough recruiting process. And I also wasn't setting the comp structure correctly to attract that A player, that person that's really going to help take things to the next level. So I was there. I would try to cheap out a little bit on comp, or I wouldn't run rigorous recruiting process with test projects and making sure you have the right fit. So if you keep doing that and you cycle people up and it's not working, I've been there. But the key is getting really clear on what you need, what that person looks like, running a really strong recruitment process to get that. I have a definition of an A player, but to get that right person for your role, to take that stuff off your plate and help take things to the next level. So I think that's the key. It really comes down to being crystal clear of what you need, what needs to be off your plate, and then going out and getting that person and having a proper process to be able to attract and retain that person. So it all comes down to getting the right person. You have the right person, it's going to be freeing. It's going to help take you to the next level. The wrong person, it's going to create more chaos, drag you back into the weeds, more frustration. And I've totally been there. And that's where I developed a framework to hire A players and get them in the right seats. And as soon as I did that, it was a total game changer for me.
So get the right people. They don't have to be perfect. Done's better than perfect. And what I'm hearing loud and clear, couldn't agree more, make sure that we have some metrics, what gets measured, what gets done. We have KPIs, we have systems in place, documentation. These are my expectations. These are the outcomes I want to see achieved. You figure out how to do it. I'm here for you. You have questions, come here. Go work your magic. Go do what you do. And Deep Nation, there's a lot of terrific, not gold, but platinum in that. And so, Josh, JL Enterprises, walk us through that. So as an example, a bit of a generic question, and Jeffrey, hey, look, every company is different. Every founder is different. I get that. Someone approaches you, yeah, Josh, I heard you on the Deep podcast and love what you're doing with your company and how you're helping other founders scale and build. Here's my company, help us. So what does your process look like in terms of the systems and the timing and the kinds of results that I could expect? What would you and the team be doing?
Yeah, so we run a family office. So we are operating, we're not just financial buyers, we're actually investors and operators and acquirers. So that's one arm. We're actively acquiring, investing, and scaling businesses, one arm. And then the second arm, we have a consulting division. And the consulting division, it started out because a lot of business owners would come to us and they would want us to invest in their business or acquire them, but it wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right industry, or it wasn't a type of business that made sense for our family office. And so going through that process, similar to a lot of the things that you've been talking about, Jeff, is like, where do these guys go to get help to get out of the weeds? Where do they go to get their business set up for success before they go to that M&A advisor? There's a lot of times, especially in, small businesses, where there's a few tweaks that they could do their business that could give them a way greater chance of having success of a sale. So it birthed out of that. People said, hey, my wife, Loretta, can you advise on us? Can you help us with this? And so we ended up doing some acquisitions in the consulting space. We built a leadership development program. We acquired an executive search recruiting firm. We acquired another HR firm as well. And then we basically took our framework of how we build and scale businesses, mainly focused on the people side, people and system side. And so, basically, if it is in the right business for us to invest or acquire, and there's an ability for us to help that founder get out of the weeds, put the right people in the right seats, the right systems, the right technology, that's where we help. And so I find a lot of times, if you do it the right way, you may not even want to sell the business at all. You may actually enjoy running it again. So sometimes once people get the right people and systems in place, they actually might not be as desperate to exit, or they can build things up a little bit further before they take it to market. So that's what it looks like. I've got different divisions inside JL Davis Enterprises that can support on the people side. I've got a technology company that goes in and sets up different systems. We can build software or implement CRMs and different technology as well. And then on the biggest thing for us is the executive search recruitment side, making sure you get that right person in the seat so that you can get out of the weeds and build the business that you dream of.
And when you're looking at different businesses, it's the good old Pareto's Law. One of my favorite questions in this kind of scenario, understanding that, yes, sure, every business is going to be different. That said, Pareto's Law says, hey, 80%, as an example, of the things that I'm achieving. 80% of my revenue is coming from 20% of my customers, or it might be 90-10 or 95-5. So let's look at for just a moment the glass half full here for just a moment. As founders, it's usually glass half full or half empty, but for the founders that you're looking at, for these companies that you're speaking with, is it the 80-20 principle? Yeah, you know what, Jeffrey? The companies that are struggling, 80% of them are having the same issues in this 20% over here. So in other words, these areas here are where most of the companies are struggling with. Are there any patterns that you're seeing that are having you say, hey, thank you, but no, thank you, I don't think we can help, or yeah, we can help, but you shouldn't have been here in the first place?
Yeah, especially we're not doing like large acquisitions. Like we target smaller businesses and then we put in our tech, our systems, and our sales processes to scale. So I'd say in the type of businesses that we're looking at, a lot of the time the business just relies so heavily on the founder. And so not to say we don't do acquisitions like that, we've done them before. It's just when you do an acquisition where everything relies so much on the founder and they're the biggest piece of the culture or the key relationships, we just have to be very serious about that transition plan. And we got to be very intentional, and you got to have some alignment with values and things like that, because you're going to get really intimate with that founder to be able to transition that business to your team. So I would say it's always better if somehow the founder can build a brand, have a few of the key team members, and it not relying so heavily for them on the leadership and the key accounts. Yeah, I see that a lot in small business. It's just kind of a natural thing that you do. But yeah, if there's a way to get yourself out of the weeds and out of all the kind of key relationships, that has a way better chance of having a quicker sale and making buyers feel more comfortable.
That's so interesting out there. Sometimes it's right in front of us. It's hiding in plain sight of what we should do and not do. And so the flip side of that, whether it be your companies, Josh, or other companies, wow, this would be a terrific company to invest in. They are doing all the right things. What are they doing that's making it work so well?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say, the ones that are working well, and I got to be careful here. I usually don't buy companies that are fully running perfectly. I'm always looking for a way to add some value on that. So I will share from experience of the companies that are doing well. The companies that are doing well, I keep saying this, but it's really having a strong leadership team. So having the right people in the right seats and having roles clearly defined so that a buyer comes in and can see, there's someone who oversees, the operations or the sales side. And you can see there's like a stronger leadership team. So you're not going to come in the business and have to step into all these different spheres of the business. So always starts with the people. If you got a strong leadership team, things are growing and scaling. That's always very positive for if you want to sell your company, seeing growth. And then just having clear systems. Like, I think the businesses that I go into, I mean, a big part of my obviously I've got lawyers and accountants, I got teams that go in and always dig into numbers and things like that. But for me, it's understanding the processes. So from quote to cash, how do we document that? How can I understand that? So the really great companies have a strong leadership team, leadership bench, whatever. It can be a supervisor. It doesn't have to be like full executive team if it's small business. And then clearly documented systems and processes. And usually if you got the right people in the right seats and good systems, everyone's clear and scorecards, the business most likely is going to be growing, which, yeah, any buyer coming in, it's always a bonus if the business is growing.
I'm wondering, Josh, someone who's listening here in Default Nation, oh my goodness, guys, Josh, you seem like a great guy. You're successful. I've got so much going on. I just don't know where to start, where to begin. Looking back, if you could recommend one strategy, and by the way, the strategy could be do this, or hey, if you're doing this, stop doing this. If there was one thing that could really move the dial based on you scaling businesses, buying businesses, selling businesses, some of that secret sauce that's helped you along the way, if there's one strategy that you could pull out and highlight, yeah, Default Nation, give this a try. Anything that comes to mind?
It does. I'm going to be very specific, but it does come down to that. I keep preaching on the A player and the people piece. But one total game changer for me was hiring a very strong executive assistant. That's one thing for any founders that whether we're consulting with or we're acquiring with, we always start with that, because typically what happens is the founder, not even knowing it, is involved in so many administrative tasks, so many things with their inbox and their calendar, and your inbox typically turns into your checklist. I was like the worst at that. But yeah, one secret sauce for me, and not cheaping out on this, finding a really strong executive assistant, having a clear process with them, getting off all the tasks that, are low level tasks, $50, $100 an hour tasks, get all those tasks off of you so that you can focus on the things that will really take the business to the next level. So I always say this, any founder, get someone to help you manage your inbox, your calendar, scheduling meetings, all the administrative tasks. Once I did that and I freed myself up, I bought back significant amount of hours of my time, and then I could focus on the things that could really help scale my business.
Reminds me of that frog in boiling water story as founders. Oh, I'll just take this on. Oh, I'll start doing that. It's just a few minutes here or there. And next thing we know, wow, it's not only consuming, but it zaps our energy and our focus. So Deep Nation, you heard it right from there, right from the trenches. Find yourself some help to offload, as I like to say, delegate, automate, or eliminate, and find some help to take care of some of the administrative things so that you can focus on what you do best. And maybe it's not even in the company. Maybe it's doing some other things, but you have a successful company because you have the right people in place. And let me ask you this before we start going into wrap-up mode, Josh. I have so many questions I haven't even had a chance to ask. We've just scratched the surface on there. But is there one important question that you and I haven't covered just yet that you want to share with Deep Wealth Nation?
Yeah, I don't think there's another question, but I think one thing that you said, but one thing that I would say that is very, very important that I didn't realize is if you are going to sell your business, you got to think about what life is going to be like after that sale and what you're going to do. And I know both Jeff, you and I have been through that the grass isn't necessarily always greener on the other side. Having more money and financial freedom and stuff, like that's definitely like, it's a good feeling for sure. But if your identity is so wrapped up in the business and then that shuts off, yeah, you can go through a bit of a who I am after that. And it can be really hard. And I struggled for 6 months. It would have been really helpful to talk to guys like yourself, Jeff, who's been through it, and just realizing when you sell and exit, what is the plan after that? And I find that's where a lot of founders can get into the situation where money isn't necessarily going to buy happiness, and you got to continue to have impact and fulfill your purpose once you sell. So what is that? What's your next venture going to be?
You're so spot on. Hey, money helps. Money can make things easier. Money can take some of the pressure off. When it comes to happiness, though, happiness is an inside job, as the saying goes. And having that purpose, having that, I can't wait to get out of bed today to start my day because I have this, whatever this is, so important. And right there with you, we've both been there, done that. And we both know, hey, it's not, at least for the two of us, not where we want to be. And for most founders, not where they want to be either. So Deep Wealth Nation, find your purpose outside the business, especially while you're still in the business. Create some time. I know you don't have the time, but create some time to do some trial balloons. Hey, I hated that activity. Never doing it again. Or you know what? I love that activity. I don't have a lot of time right now, but I'm going to keep on doing that activity maybe once a week or a few times a month. And I'm going to keep building this life outside the business. So when it comes time to exit at one point, it's a smooth transition. There's a lot of wisdom in there. And speaking of wisdom, Josh, it's a great segue to go into our wrap-up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's both my privilege, my honor. I ask the same question to every guest. It's a fun question. Let me set this up for you. Okay. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So Josh, imagine now it's tomorrow morning. And you look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, this is the fun part, the door is open and it's waiting for you to hop on in. So you hop into the DeLorean car. You're now going to go to any point in your life. Josh, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time that would be, what one line, what piece of advice would you tell your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons? Or, hey, Josh, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Oh my gosh, Jeff, that is such a good question. I'm going to have to just think about that for a sec. If I was to go back, and I'll relate this to business, and I was to tell my younger self, let's say a teenager, and wanting to be like my grandfathers and build a business, I would tell myself just how important it is to have mentors and strong people in your life that have been where you want to go. And so the reason why I would do that, and I won't take too long in this, is like after I lost both of my grandfathers, I went for a period of, let's say, 7 years trying to do it on my own, trying to make it work, reading different books and things like that. And then once I realized the power of having a mentor, someone who can be a sounding board, someone who's been there, done that, that is one thing that really took me to the next level. And so I would say to anyone building a business, it's really important to find mentors, people that have been further along than you, because they can help you limit some mistakes or give you ideas or bounce things off you that you just sometimes just can't figure out on your own. I think that is something that is really important. I wish I found mentors earlier after my grandfathers passed away.
Such terrific advice. I absolutely love that. Surround yourself with mentors who have been where you want to go. And, it also goes back to we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most amount of time with. And so look at who you're surrounding yourself with. And you may not realize that those are your mentors, but have they been, to your words, Josh, have they been already in their lives to where you want to be, or have they not? And so some terrific advice there. And Josh, someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they have a question for you or the team, or maybe they're curious, hey, perhaps Josh and team can help us where we want to go and we can figure some kind of business arrangement out. Where would be the best place online for someone to find you?
Yeah, to connect with my group of companies, they can go to our website, jldavisenterprises.com. If it's a founder that wants to connect with me personally, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So they can find me at Scaling with Josh Davis on LinkedIn. And yeah, just one thing that popped up when we were talking about this, I keep talking about A players. I do have a framework that I have. So if anyone listening wants access to my framework, you can DM me the word A players on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the exact framework that I use to recruit, hire, and build high performance teams. So something that I've developed over 10 years. And yeah, happy to share it with any founders that are having trouble struggling, getting the right people in the right seats. This has been a game changer for me.
Absolutely love that. So Deep Wealth Nation, firstly, great news. It's all in the show notes. It's a point and click. It doesn't get any easier. And send a direct message to Josh, A players. Send that and you'll get this incredible resource that made the difference for him. Well, Josh, it's official. Congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribe, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.